Welcome to the Roar podcast. This is a wellbeing podcast, and it's there to inspire you to create a life that you absolutely love. Here at Roar, we care deeply about people's physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. And it's so important because too many of us walk the tightrope between pressure to perform and fighting fatigue from not prioritizing our well-being. And so we literally work through our burnout and sacrifice our work-life balance in order to get ahead in our careers. And there is another way, and it starts with the resilient you. And so I'm your host, Marilise de Villiers-Basson, and I am so delighted to welcome Nadja El Fertasi to my podcast today. Hi, Nadja.
Hi, Marilise. You pronounce your name and my name, but you're so beautiful name.
Thank you so
Very
much.
eloquent.
Thank you. And we had literally just discovered before this call that we share Dutch roots. Well, I don't know that for sure, but I speak Afrikaans, you speak Dutch, and I know you're
Yes.
originally from Morocco, so Africa in our blood for sure.
Definitely.
So
And
I just
thank
want
you for
to,
having me.
oh, thank you for being here. And so I just want to tell our readers a little bit about you. Nadja is the founder of Thrive with EQ, and that's a pioneering human resilience thought leader. She is a pioneering human resilience thought leader, I should say, and former NATO senior executive, recognized for her innovative approach in integrating emotional intelligence with cyber security. And so this is many, many, many years of experience. But really what is so impressive about her is really her global recognition as a thought leader and speaker that underscores her commitment to redefining leadership in the digital age. It's really about being a trusted guide for those seeking to thrive amidst the complexities of our increasingly connected world. And so we're both very, very passionate about personal resilience and really empowering people really to show up as their best, most resilient selves every day and committing to a life of resilience. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Listen, I'm going to
Thank you.
dive straight in because I want you to tell us a little bit more about your purpose in your words, so what's the why?
Thank you so much, Marilise, for that beautiful introduction. And my why, that is the $1,000,000 question, right? It all started with Simon Sinek, who kind of goes through the circles to get to the why.
Yes.
And I think if I start, I also in our lives we go through many stages. And a few years ago, someone shared in a podcast, before you go to bed and you ask yourself, and it is a very deep question: did my life matter today? Did what I do matter today? And for a long time, the answer was no, for me at least. And I would go to bed and I would assume I would wake up, but it's never guaranteed. And then I hit at a certain, and we'll go into that in more depth later on, perhaps, but I hit burnout when I was at NATO, when I handed in my resignation. And I started Thrive with EQ, emotional intelligence, because I felt that so many people are struggling inside corporations, inside institutions. There's so much pressure outside. We don't know how to work with each other as human beings. And as the digital advances go on, what will become of the human? So I combined my expertise in practical experience, 20 plus years in the workforce, plus my love and passion and expertise in emotional intelligence, with how can we help prepare people. Then COVID hit, and then cybersecurity became very prevalent. And then I brought in my 15 plus year in cybersecurity, working in cyber for such a long decade, and said, okay, how can we help people not fall victim to the challenges, both from a social engineering perspective, but also how do we make cyber a responsibility for every leader, for every team, because information technology is our nervous system. And throughout these past 5 years, I experimented a lot. I faced a lot of obstacles, not only as an entrepreneur, but as a single mother, as a woman. People did not get what I was trying to do. So it was a very, very tough road, but the why kept. Like I fell down, I kept going up, and I was like adamant, emotional firewall is going to be a global pioneering concept. I don't care. I had to adapt and tweak, but it is going. So I just kept at it. And then it just came, the why showed itself when I stopped looking for it. It's to empower every generation, businesses, societies, and individuals with emotional intelligence and resiliency skills against the challenges of the digital age. So from a business perspective, it's cyber resilience. From a societal perspective, it's emotional firewalls against scams and fraud. And from an individual perspective, it's EQ oasis. It's that resiliency. Then how can we empty our backpack that is filled with stones from the past so we can live life lighter? How do we get through our dark times? And that is what wakes me up. That is what I feel so aligned and what comes easy to me now. Everything that doesn't come easy, it's we should think about, is this what I'm supposed to do? But I think I stopped looking for my why, and what really helped me feel at ease is just explore who I am and what I'm capable of sharing my life story, sharing my expertise, sharing my experience. I'm no longer putting any pressure that this is my mission or this is my why or I'm going to change the world. I'm like, what can I give? How can I help today? What wants to come through me? And the more I started doing that, the more my life became easier, like in so many ways. And I'm like, I wish I knew this before. So
Well, this is certainly something I have to hear today. So thank you for sharing that, because I think it is about that sort of really authentically being you and really leaning into the belief and the lifestyle, almost, I want to say, that your message matters. And you know that by sharing your story, your unique wisdom, which is as unique as your fingerprint, by the way, you really help other people. And that's the combination of being really courageous in sharing your message, but also being vulnerable. And you know, as Brené Brown so beautifully explained, you know, there's no courage without vulnerability, and the two really sit beautiful together. So I'm going to ask you to get a little bit vulnerable with us, if you don't mind. And really, you know, we know that we don't reach burnout. It's never the actual burnout. It's never the actual thing that happens when we get to that point where enough is enough and we step away. I think we sort of spoke a little bit about our shared experiences in that space. What is the sort of the backstory there?
yes, it's I could write like a whole encyclopedia about my life's experience, but I will try to keep it in a nutshell. And so I watched Marilissa's TED Talk this morning because I like to also understand people's story. And I was kind of shocked in a good way when you shared that you faced abuse as a young child, because I faced abuse also from a family friend who we trusted, who we stayed with 1 month when my parents went on a pilgrimage in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. And I was 6 years old, and that is, I think, the start of. I was also born in the Netherlands, grew up in a Moroccan family, very traditional family. I mean, I love my parents. Everyone does the best that they can, but it was very much, you know, the woman keeping in the house, or you know, not going on school trips, being excluded, etc. It's that mentality still. And that shaped my, you know, our brain doesn't know logic before the age of 7. So the heavy emotional imprints we experience as a child, they then become memory and personality in along. So that was the foundation of my self-worth, basically nothing, right? And that's how I kind of went through life. I developed this coping mechanism to deal with my traumas through living in my imagination. So I have a huge imagination, which serves me well now for scenario writing and storytelling. But it was a coping mechanism to not be intimate with people. And intimate, I don't mean a physical form. I mean, into me, I see. If we really connect with people, we have to be vulnerable. So that was for me too hard because I couldn't trust people. So I developed fantasies or the idea of people in order to keep myself safe. And that's how I went through life. And I had uh, terrible experiences in relationships, friendships, and also romantic. I then ended up in a narcissistic, abusive relationship, and I was very much career woman, ambitious, but I never felt enough. I always felt shame, as you shared in your TED talk. I always felt I'm a fraud, an imposter. So I was trying harder and harder to impress, to belong. I'm very highly sensitive person. It doesn't mean I cry, but doesn't mean I'm crybaby, but it means I'm very sensitive to emotions, energy, stimuli. I see the world very differently than a lot of people. I like curiosity, and I feel very deeply as well. And when you feel very deeply, it's very hard because you try to, it just becomes overwhelming. It's beautiful in a way because you turn feelings into stories. And I never knew that about myself until I was, 30 plus. So I was always trying to fit in places that I didn't belong. And I ended up in NATO. I'm glad I did because although I suffered from imposter syndrome and I was very insecure, all those years I spoke less and I listened more. So I absorbed a lot of information that now I'm able to share. People like, how do you know so much? Because I listened, because I was trying to, I was too scared to speak up, or I wasn't, having confidence. There's always, I look for the positive side of things. Until one time, it doesn't matter how much validation you look on the outside, how many adventures, awards, accolades, titles you try to seek, promotions, it's never enough because you don't feel enough. And then burnout is just an accumulation of visible and invisible stress. And I just went in burnout and I said, for me, this was okay. I'm going to start over as an entrepreneur. I want to become an entrepreneur. And I didn't allow myself the time to just be me, to not work, to rest, to recover, to figure out my purpose or to figure out what I want to do. And I went on to the next thing, and I still had that NATO mindset as well. And if what you don't deal with, persists. So you have to, what you resist persists. That's the saying. And I think COVID happened, and that was after my burnout. So I managed COVID well from a mental perspective, but it was a very challenging test because my business was at stake. I was alone. I had a son, and it was very, very hard. But I had still that childhood trauma. I fell for a romance scam because I was trying to escape my reality. I think we live in a world where so many people sell us stuff because, change your life, change your life. And I just wish people would accept where they are and they don't need to, escape. They want to live a life where they don't need to escape anymore and to go outside. And I tried. And so I got scammed. That was a very shameful, painful experience, but I'm glad it happened because I know what it feels like and I can teach about it, but now I know what it feels like and I've turned it into my mission as well. But until I really stopped and I felt the years of pain, I felt the years of shame. I'm almost tearing up now, but I felt the years of not feeling enough, of being ashamed of who I was. I was trying to hide my sensitivity. I was trying to hide my different way of thinking, my creativity. And I was trying to make my business not from what I wanted to do, but trying to follow other people's guidance. And I had to feel the pain because otherwise the pain was just going to block me. And that was a very difficult period. A lot of people, we all say help people, be there, and we post quotes about it. But when someone in need comes to you for help and they cannot do anything for you, it's very transactional, people often don't care, at least the people I met in my life. So I found myself very lonely. I found myself very rock bottom. And that was the moment where I said, you have to feel the pain, you have to heal it, you have to develop a relationship, spirituality with God, I grew very close with God, whatever God means for you. And that is what actually saved me. And that is what makes me feel very at peace, because I'm no longer doing what I do to get validation. It's a bonus, right? Some
Yeah.
people call it arrogance. I call it I'm just at peace. You like what I do? Great. You don't like? Okay. I just look at the data. How can I serve better? And feedback, obviously, but my self-worth has no correlation with anyone's opinion. My self-worth comes directly from something much bigger. And because
Yes.
I've been through hell and back, and I think there's a saying, religious people, I mean, I am also religious, but this is no offense to any religion, but religious people are scared to go to hell. Spiritual people have already been there. And I think, and this is what helped me cultivate this inner peace, this calmness, it doesn't mean the beast is dead. The beast is still there. And I think a lot
Yes.
of people mistake when you are at peace that they can try you and test you. But when they do, they awaken the beast and then they regret it because calm people are very, very dangerous people if you provoke and mess with them. Right? That's how I keep my peace as well for me and my
Yeah.
son, Bunny.
Yeah. I love that. And it's so powerful when, we can teach our life curriculums. I think I almost say I feel privileged that I can do what I do for a living. And I think you and I are on similar paths in terms of our desire to help, and especially in the cybersecurity industry where, burnout, I mean, the numbers are staggering. It's so bleak and daunting. I think it's the new pandemic, just global burnout. I think everybody is operating in a very deep state of kind of fatigue slash burnout and really tired and dare I say, kind of sticking our heads in the sand because we're just like, we don't know. It's too hard to feel. And so I love that you presence with us, the importance of feeling it. I think what was the hardest for me as well, and I completely relate with what you're saying, is 16 years in corporate made me really like I was always in my head. So
Yes.
I didn't know how to feel anymore. And so relearning how to feel. And then, as you say, going on that spiritual journey, where you then ultimately find that higher self and the inner peace. And yes, it's continuous work. It doesn't just happen miraculously overnight. And as you say, the beast is always there. It's always kind of lingering. So it's a continued process of committing to being resilient, committing to prioritizing your well-being. So I think, I'm so it's so beautiful, and I have looked at your, I mean, always read your posts and your message, like on LinkedIn, it's just so articulate and so to the point, exactly what you're doing. So your authenticity really shines through, and I really want to commend you for that.
Thank
So
you.
that's super, super, super. So just a little bit of stats, from all of your beautiful posts. I've just sort of extracted a few things, but 62% of people report overwhelming fear or anxiety. That's 2/3. 1 in 3 adults experience chronic loneliness. That was an interesting one for me, as someone who's not necessarily had to face that because I've always had my husband and my kids. But you can also be chronically lonely despite all the people in your life. So that's an interesting one. And then I guess specifically CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, how many are actually admitting to burnout, and really it's kind of about those excessive expectations on them. It's kind of having that sort of real pressure to perform. So it's like almost like first responders. You're always on and you always have to be on high alert. And so I wanted to explore the problem with you a little bit, because I think, the whole fear and anxiety, can you help us understand sort of our relationship with fear and anxiety, please?
Yes, definitely. So, I mean, from a let me approach it from a scientific perspective, but also with a dose of spirituality, because I think we need both perspectives. So from a scientific perspective, what is fear? Fear is an emotion you feel when you are navigating uncertainty, when you don't know what's next, or when you don't necessarily feel capable of handling the challenge that is in front of you. So fear is not an emotion to be scared of. Often we even fear feeling the fear. Fear is an emotion. Emotions serve a purpose. They're like the boom serves its purpose to the sailing boat to navigate on sea. So do our emotions. So understanding the root cause of fear will help you diffuse fear. So you can look at these emotions as a thermometer. At one end, there's cold, and the other, there's warm. So they are polar opposite. When you feel cold, you want to have more warmth. So you're going to turn up the thermometer. When you feel too warm, you're going to turn it down. So you feel colder. Fear is, when you look at ancient teachings, it's the polar opposite, but it's part of the same spectrum. There are fear, and then you have courage, right? You have fear, and you have also love. And I will go into love a little bit deeper. It's not necessarily romantic love, what I'm talking about, but understanding what is the antidote of fear. It's knowledge. Okay, what is fear trying to tell me? If I go outside and it's 11 o'clock in the night and I feel fear, that is good. It's trying to tell me, are you sure it is safe to go outside by yourself? Are you sure that you've taken the precautions? It just makes me more vigilant, right? Excessive fear would go out anyway and then overthink everything. Once I made a decision to go out, now I'm out. I'm taking that risk, right? But it's there to help us think. Fear, however, if you imagine you're sitting now behind your microphone, you feel safe. And I don't know what your relationship is with tigers. I do love tigers, but I am afraid of undomesticated
Yes.
tiger. So there's an undomesticated tiger in the corner of your room. Now, I assume you're going to feel fear and you're going to go in stress mode. So flight, fight, or freeze mode. So you're going to use up all your mental energy, right? That's the stress response, to escape, to save yourself. Now imagine this was cave times. Imagine the current environment, the digital environment, and especially when you work in tech and when you work with cyber, every constant impulse, emails, thoughts, fears are causing that tiger is chasing you. So you're using all your physical, right? Your physical energy, your brain. Its primary purpose is not to think; it's to help us survive. It's
Yes.
regulating the body energy, and there's too many resources going to escaping the tiger. So this is why it's important to feel the fear, understand what the fear is about, and then move to presence, courage, and confidence. Why is this so difficult when it comes to CISOs, and especially male CISOs? And again, there's no real evidence that men are less emotionally intelligent than women. It's just depending on their upbringing and which values and which markers they actually value more. But in general, a lot of people, and especially men, have been taught to think their way through life, right? To rationalize their way through life. But we can't handle or deal with stress effectively and fear effectively, and we're only going to think our way through these situations. We need to be able to feel our emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. We need to be able to tell the brain, this is what I'm feeling. I am not fear. I feel fear. And calm ourselves down in the sense this is, not so we stay present. So we kind of reduce the stress, the false sense of stress. And if we don't do that, what happens? A typical day of the CISO. They wake up already with stress, invisible stress. Many of them will never admit it because it's their pride. It's their, I'm not good enough. As human beings, when we unlearn or when we learn new skills, it feels as if something is wrong with us. Growth mindset comes with emotional discomfort. Now they open up their emails. Most of it is bad news or no resources and more things. And they have their personal life as well. Then they go in the office or work from home. Then they have the meeting and trying to explain, basic cybersecurity hygiene. 90, at least when I was at NATO, we did a lot of briefings, and 90% of risk could have been reduced, could and was reduced through cyber hygiene, through how people actually acted with data online. And then they carry those negative emotions from one interaction to the other event, to the other meeting. And you have this whole emotional carryover. So you are compounding these negative emotions day in, day out. I mean, that is a recipe for disaster and chronic stress, which then leads to burnout, which is the definition of World Health Organization. Now, from a spiritual perspective, it's to understand that we are not our emotions, right? We feel our emotions, and life happens and unfolds. And how can we become more of an observer? Very simple example: you have a bottle of soda and you have a bottle of water. In the bottle of soda, if you shake it, at one point you're going to open, it's going to explode. The bottle of water, no matter how many times you shake it, it will always stay calm, will flow. So those bubbles represent triggers, right? So from a spiritual perspective, how can you understand the root cause of your triggers, or stop reacting to everything and to your triggers? So you just feel and let it out, and then you move forward, right? It's like it's a daily practice. Now, for those who are highly technical or highly logical, who are used to work in a highly technical field, this feels very uncomfortable. This goes against a lot of the things they know and they've learned. And, it's like, sounds like woo-woo. So what I try to do is approach it from a scientific perspective, but be very practical about it. This is why my experience in NATO and working with technical and all kinds of stakeholders is important, because a lot of academics, bless them, they use data, statistics to speak to people, but people care about their problems, their values, right? People, social engineering attacks. Someone who works in customer support doesn't care about neuroplasticity. When they are overwhelmed and they get a call, they're probably just going to comply, right? So it's really about using mind and heart, understanding the practical, but do what works for you, and approach it both from a holistic perspective, but also from a very practical perspective as well. Understanding, okay, what does emotions mean? Where does the fear come from? A lot of times when you understand where the fear comes from, it dissipates immediately. And understanding what you can control and what you cannot control, and understanding your visible and invisible stress. A lot of time, the energy that leads to burnout is from the invisible stress.
Yes, yes. And I think it's so important that, so often when you feel overwhelmed, when you feel helpless, and I think often CISOs are in this place where they don't necessarily feel empowered to make decisions, right? So I think it's a lot about your inability to make decisions, because it's so important to make decisions to move forwards. Even if it's the wrong decision, it's still important to do something and to say, okay, we're going to do X and move forwards. And if we then haven't actually done the right thing, we can always course correct, we can adjust, can adapt. And I love what you're saying about, the actual brain heart coherence and really feeling all the feels. Because I also think when you feel through things, it also then clears the mind. It makes you really clear, and it gives you that ability then to make better decisions and make decisions faster. So there's something about, obviously, the so what for me about dealing with fear and anxiety is really because ultimately, if you want to thrive, you want to be able to make better decisions. And that clarity only comes when you actually allow yourself to feel all the feels. And
yes,
never put something in a box. I I think many of my feelings over the years, I've been such a high performer. I was kind of wearing my burnout like a badge of honor, like my busyness like a badge of honor. And it's like every time you put something in a box and you're like, no, tick, done, tick, done, tick, done, of course it's going to come back with a vengeance. And I think my vengeance moment was that, at 40 years old, complete and utter burnout. And, I think you share with your entrepreneurial journey as well, the old habits die hard. It's not like those tendencies just miraculously disappeared the moment I stepped away from my corporate career and started my own business. It's almost like the devil came back and it came back, and it's like
Yes,
going to test you until you do the inner work, until you really feel it and heal it. So yeah,
exactly.
so that's really powerful. I want to switch over and really explore the solution, because I know you have and we've talked about the heart to mind coherence. I know that's a core part of what you do and what you teach. But I would love to hear a little bit more. If you can tell us a little bit more, please, that would be amazing.
Yes, definitely. So I try to keep things practical and simple based on the experience I had, because that's how we're going to make big wins when we have small steps that resonate with people. So when it comes from a business perspective, how I work from businesses, you're absolutely right, because the CISO is not going to solve the CISO stress problem on their own. It's a cultural, it's a leadership, and it's an individual behavioral challenge. And it's like the motor and the oil. Without the oil, the motor is not going to work. Without, the motor without oil is also not going to work. So you need to have this three-part approach in order to drive healthy security cultures. So no matter, unfortunately, how much the CISO is doing self-care and applying emotional intelligence, if there's no support from the top leadership, if there's no confidence in the CISO themselves that solutions are being worked on, because nothing was changed overnight, and that they have the trust and support they need, then it's not going to happen. And you see the ripple effect that regulations are being put in place that are holding C-suite now accountable, not only CISOs. So it's like we function from this carrot and stick. Only when bad things happen, then we need more regulation, and then we are going to adhere, versus taking a step back and being more proactive. So I work with clients to look at the cultural, the leadership, and the behavioral, and not to add it as a burden, but to include it in mainstream. This is what we did in NATO when cyber was adopted as operational domain. We integrated in what already existed. So when we look at, for example, talent management or learning and development, often we offer cyber as an additional curriculum, which in my view is not necessarily working, because a lot of people, unless you're in cybersecurity, don't care about cybersecurity. They care about performance. They care about communication skills. They care about meeting their targets. They care about stakeholders. They care about looking good in front of the boss. They care about, presenting skills. So how I approach cyber awareness is not from a place of cyber, because I'm looking at it. Cyber is not something separate. It's our nervous system. We operate, we live, we breathe in the digital age. Everything we do depends on technology. So as we would take care to have a healthy nervous system, we should do the same with technology. So understanding how can you include cyber as a dimension in the existing training. So for example, the chief sales officer or the sales teams understand the risk implications of their current behaviors on increasing or reducing the cyber risk. For example, when speed triumphs prevails over security, which is often the case, they need to hit targets. But when someone is focused on hitting targets, they're going to care less about security and taking time to reflect when they are being pressured, right? The path to least resistance, people, their emotions, then actually valuing security. So that is a risk for the business as well, because data breach will cost their reputation, a lot of recovery costs, loss of confidence. You have to do even more marketing to rebrand yourself as the resilient champion who came out of it. So this is how you then approach it. Okay, it's not about update, because let's face it, when people are stressed or when people are in their, positive emotions or not paying attention, they're not going to remember the cybersecurity awareness video from whatever vendor is selling them. So this is one aspect. Then it is looking at leadership. Leadership, they don't have to become cybersecurity leaders, but they do have to start leading in a different way. They have to understand their people. Social engineering is the most prevalent form of cyber attacks. What does social engineering mean? It means manipulating people's emotions. They weaponize emotions. So when you teach people how to use it as a shield, then you can reduce the risk. This involves knowing your people. What is the root cause of insider threat? It is unintentional, when people make mistakes and they hide it under the rug because they fear judgment. Sometimes it's intentional. They want to get back at the manager, right? So it's all blurred. And this is what it makes it uncomfortable, because especially in a technical mindset, it's very siloed. One cannot touch the other. It's not therapy, right? And so I really approach it with basic scenarios, with reflection, like how to understand the mechanics. And then the cultural. You want to make cyber a social responsibility. But if you're going to call it cyber, then people are not going to care, because they're like, oh, it's more work, more knowledge. I already am up until here fatigued. So
Yes,
it's
yes,
being
yes.
very intentional in understanding the business performance challenges, the culture, etc., and approaching it from this perspective. From a public perspective, so I'm trying to build a not-for-profit emotional firewalls academy, which is why I'm running this campaign, to help each and every generation not teach them technical skills, but teach them how they can build emotional firewalls, so emotional intelligence and resilience, as a muscle. Not
Yeah.
only will they increase their protection in the digital age, but they will also have a higher quality of life. They will also have better relationship. So it's not, scams and fraud is a huge problem of how we live in the digital age. So how can we increase our quality of life, build that invisible shield, not to disconnect us from other people or to live in paranoia, but to live safer and secure, and not only focus on scams, etc., right?
Yes.
The practical stuff. There are many other parts of the solution. I'm just working on one dimension. So this is my mission with Emotional Firewalls Academy, to build a not-for-profit accessible to each and every generation around the world, and to work, to get resources from thought leaders. I don't necessarily like the word expert, because when you call yourself an expert, it means that you know too much already. I don't know. Every day I'm like, I want to learn more. I don't know anything. So, but to work with people, and then to combine all the disciplines, and to combine the psychology, to combine the studies, and to really offer something that is practical, engaging, and relevant in people's map of the world. And then the last way how I work with individuals is the individual, what you share, right? It's just basically my life stories. When I watched your TED talk, I could relate. So we often think we are alone, but a lot of people are going through the same thing. It's also not only the dependency on technology, but how do we have relationships? How do we get out of being financially broke? How do we get over our shame when we are scammed? How do we get through a divorce? How do we make it as a single parent trying to build a business, having issues at home, and it's just so overwhelming? How do we feel enough in a world where, I appreciate titles and achievements, don't get me wrong, but it is, if that is your benchmark for happiness, and it's so difficult to be human, right? Everyone is looking. So this is why I came up with the EQ Oasis, to basically share emotional intelligence, but from my own life story. And then those who resonate, who are in a dark place, have the tools to get out of it, right? So this is how I approach the holistic. And obviously, I envision to have a team for each and everyone, because the worst thing as an entrepreneur you can do is to is to do everything by yourself. But I'm planting the seeds, right? To build kind of these strands, and to work with partners, to when I die, I leave the world a little bit better, and not because of me, but because what I built and how it will serve humanity. That's how this is what, because let's face it, like you said, it's very, very hard to be an entrepreneur. It's very hard to be a woman entrepreneur, and no one claps for you until you are on the Forbes list, until you are on some fancy magazine, which is too late because then you don't care, right? So it's like showing up every day, clapping yourself on the back. I have my son, who makes me drawings. Ali Mama, I don't know if you can see, drive it to you.
Oh,
He's like my biggest supporter. So you feel you have to show up every single day, and no one is clapping for you. No one cares, right? When I was at NATO, I knew people were there for my title, and as soon as I left NATO, it was like, and I had to get through that as well, which is why I think for me, the validation I get from inside, from God, from my mission, from what I do, and that is what fuels me, right? So I am
yes.
no, and I was so much focused on the support, the likes, the will I get help, and it just made my life so much harder. And I just let it go. I appreciate it when I get feedback. I appreciate it when I get recognition, but it's not the fuel, right? It's just cherry on top as well. And that is what will sustain you. The more you just separate who you are and your self-worth from what you do and from, the people, and understand people just are reflecting their own. People are at war with you often because they're at war with themselves, right? Some will like you, some don't. They envy when you are when you have the trophy, but they don't envy how you got there. So I'm very, very, mind is focused. I don't play into jealousy or envy. If I truly admire someone or respect them, I will share. If I don't, I'm still kind, but I will not say something I don't believe. And I just don't give energy to people who try to compete, who are jealous, or if they try to make drama in my life, then they see a whole different version of me as well. And not in any violence. I just cut people off. I have zero tolerance policy because this is what people don't understand. And I think you can relate when you've been through hell back and forth. It's like you become in a way fearless and unapologetic about your mental health and your peace.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. You've articulated this so beautifully, and it makes me so excited because I think, I'm forever banging on about we need a holistic approach. We need to integrate cyber into the fabric of the organizations in all those dimensions, cultural, obviously from a leadership, from an individual perspective. So I love how you've really sort of cohesively explained it. It's really powerful, Nadja. Thank you so much. I'm reflecting really on, whose responsibility is it? So if you're an individual and sort of just the personal resilience aspect, in terms of the company expecting you to be responsible for your own resilience, do you see that a lot in organizations where the actual individual gets all the responsibility on their shoulders to become resilient, and it's almost like the company sort of washing their hands of the
yeah,
problem.
so when I do emotional intelligence training, and it's like a student or the employee shared with me, because people they raise their eyebrows when they hear resilience, right? Because what does it mean in their terms? Doing more with less, shoving it on people. So people don't necessarily like resilience because
Yeah,
it puts more responsibility on them. However, when you approach resiliency from a systemic, so from a cultural perspective, from a leadership perspective, and from an individual as a whole, it works really well. But
yes,
if you
yes.
expect people I think our companies are waking up, and if not, they're going to be in for a rude awakening, because many are burning out, are quitting their job, or quiet quitting. They're doing the bare minimum. They don't like
Yes,
going to work. They're becoming entrepreneurs, right? They're just, leaving at mass scale or being absent, which cost the company enormously. There's a leadership crisis going on. So let's not wait until full-blown emergency, and we are definitely heading that way, to take a step back and say, okay, how can we approach resiliency from this perspective? Because individually, people need to become more resilient in the sense that, yes, things are hard, but how do we manage our emotions to bounce back, to not, feel triggered, take personally, to have difficult conversation, to take responsibility also for ourselves, and to take responsibility of the impact of our actions on others. But that's not enough, because you can be as resilient as Mother Teresa as you want. If you're working for a leader that is toxic, then you're never gonna get sick you're never gonna get better in the same environment that made you sick. And from my experience, I've seen a lot of times companies keeping the leader that is toxic at the expense of their employees because of whatever policy. And what culture do you create then, right?
Yes.
So that is really important. When you are a chief executive officer or a board, you have a responsibility to your people. Because often what I've experienced is that they keep leaders with no people skill, right? With only a desire to shine at the expense of their team in place. The other element, to be fair to leaders in manager positions, many are overflooded. So they don't have the skills to manage the pressure from their team, the pressure from above, and then the pressure from external stakeholders. Which is why you need this holistic approach to understand resilience is not doing more with less, but it's looking at what weighs us down internally, what makes our people not necessarily feel motivated. I love what I do. I'm connected with my mission. I'm connected with God. But there are days where I do not feel motivated and I want to stay in bed or I want to go to the Bahamas. So I develop discipline, because without discipline, there's no freedom, there's no happiness, there's no fulfilling, right? It's the process. I'm folk because they've seen this with athletes. When they win the World Cup, the best athletes, the next day they are back in training. It's the process, right? Serena Williams as well. This is where I got it from. So teach people discipline. Teach that it's okay to feel sad at work, that you don't feel like it. But execution, you do it anyway. That's how I show up. And when people feel connected with what they do, right, no matter what function it, you're not what you do. A lot of people think, this is who I am, my work, my title. No, it is what you do. You can write poetry and you can be a chief information security officer. You can be, someone who plays the guitar, and you can be a chief financial officer. Your work is what you do, and how you reframe, how you feel what you do, and going into flow state is already what will reduce a lot of the stress. Don't correlate your self-worth with what you do. And this is a sensitive topic because a lot of people do correlate their worth with these accolades, with these titles, right? I'm probably getting a lot of triggering. I can feel it.
I was just going to say, hashtag me too. I vividly remember after leaving my corporate career in employment, it was like I completely lost my identity. So I can very much relate. So Nadja, we are out of time. This is such a beautiful conversation. So many golden nuggets that you shared for us to take away. And I think, the main thing, the main image, I love how you're sharing images with us and your storytelling. It's so powerful. And the main image that sort of comes up for me is that sort of moment in The Lion King in the movie where Mufasa comes to Simba in a dream, and he says to Simba, remember who you are, and that is for me such a beautiful way to sort of conclude this conversation, because I really hear you say that very, very loud and clear. So
Remember
beautiful.
Who you are, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
One final note before we close out. I mean, I think hashtag me too. I spent years in correlating my identity with self-worth. It's not that, because people think, well, it's easy for you to say. No, I've lived through the experience. And this is what if I would tell anything, women, what will get you soaring in your life is confidence, not arrogance, but confidence. Disease to please, years, got me only misery, got me nowhere. Being too nice, not rocking the status, something the boat, got me nowhere. The moment I started wearing my confidence and believing in myself when no one else, even when no one else did, that is what shifted everything. So if any, men or women, confidence, not arrogance. You're not better than anyone and no one is better than you. But
Yes.
wear your confidence on this every day. Don't let anyone make you feel small without your permission. You can feel small, but you allow them. So sorry, that was my
Yes.
last.
Beautiful. I love
Yeah.
that. And I think that's again where we have to take responsibility for our choices. So Nadia, I think the best way people can reach you would be on LinkedIn and also
Yes.
on your website,
Yes.
thrivewithiq.com.
Yeah. Yes.
So really, I just want to, this was an amazing conversation, and I know my viewers and my listeners are gonna absolutely love it. And I
Thank
cannot
you.
thank you enough for making the time to be with me today.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being a great host. And I love these kind of vulnerable, authentic conversations. And I kept my promise. I overspeak.
And it's so good because you're planting the seeds, and those seeds are, I'm already like, I want in. So we'll definitely have a conversation after this about doing something together. I can see that happening. So thank you for that too.
Thank
So
you.
everybody, thank you for joining us today. If you loved this conversation, please hit the subscribe button. We always have a powerhouse, or we have a powerhouse of guests lined up for the rest of the year. So you don't want to miss even a minute. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can also reach me on LinkedIn, Marilise de Villiers. You can go to my website, Marilise de Villiers, or you can email me, Marilise at marilise-de-villiers.com. And in the meantime, live your authentic purpose, stand in your power, and have the courage to roar.
Yes.
Bye for now.
Bye.